Alright, so I thought I'd do a walkthrough of the current state of the machine. Right now I have the tables off, I have the yoke pulled out, and the reason I had to pull the yoke out is because if you look here, the electric motor powering the cutter head and the cutter head itself are all one assembly with a through shaft, and this housing is one casting. So it's a continuous casting, and that keeps the two bearings concentric to not only the cutter head but the through shaft of the electric motor. So it's a good design, but it makes it a little more difficult to get the motor and the cutter head out. So if you look here, when I open up the flange on the bearing housing, the bearing in there is not original. This machine's probably pushing 100 years old, and that's definitely a modern bearing, a sealed bearing. So what that tells me is somebody's had this assembly apart before, and I believe when they put this motor back in, they put it back in backwards, and that's okay, because if it's a through shaft, it's three-phase. It's currently wired 480. I was going to rewire it for 220, but you notice that there's no terminals on the back. Here's my lead wires, and it is in fact a dual voltage motor. You can see here it's clearly labeled that it could be 220 or 480, but there's no terminals to do the swap. So that tells me that the terminals are on the back of the motor. And so what I need to do is press this entire assembly out, flip the motor around. I may have the motor rebuilt. We've got a local company here that rebuilds electric motors. I'll get them to quote me for just rebuilding it. It's probably time for that anyway after all these years. So I'll press that whole assembly out and remove the cutter head from the motor and do any repairs, flip the motor around the correct way, press it back in. So that's kind of what I'm working on now, is making the press fixture. So I've got some steel tubing I picked up yesterday off Facebook Market, and I'm going to get this stuff cleaned up today. It's got some surface rust on it, and I'm going to put together a drawing for a press fixture. I'm going to try to use a 6-ton bottle jack, but I'm not sure it has the stroke length I want, so I may go up to an 8 or 10 or maybe even a 20-ton jack, just because I would like a larger one anyway. So based off the jack I'm going to use, or try to use, and the dimensions of the yoke, I'm just starting to sketch up some drawings so I can go make a more elaborate drawing upstairs, and whatever I come up with I'm going to start fabricating. So that's where I currently am. Hopefully get this thing pressed out this week, and we'll go from there.